Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
Welcome back and good morning, and it's the start of a new day of our intensive, and I'm so happy that you came. I'm so happy to be having this time with you. It's really wonderful. So I think trust in community probably begins with a tentative sense that there's something good going on here. You know, this sort of a feeling, felt sense. Still, we're weary creatures, right? Living in an individualistic society, nothing is more ridiculed than corporate attempts at creating a sense of belonging by calling workers partners or engaging in team building fun days. Many people proudly proclaim that they are not joiners. Further, many forms of community, civic organizations, bowling leagues, bridge clubs, and so on have vanished from our increasingly distracted and fragmented society, as Robert Putnam detailed in Bowling Alone. Some of you may be familiar with that book. It's about that loss of small-scale community that we have in our society now. But Zen was never meant to be an isolated individual meditation practice, some kind of solitary quest. From the very beginning, it was irreducibly social. So we begin again in a fresh way. We begin with the seeds of friendship. One or two people we enjoy being with, or a teacher with a way of being that inspires us. We take a class or attend an intensive, beginning a personal journey of belonging. But what are we belonging to? In meditation, we first learn how we belong to our own heart and mind and body, our inherent Buddha nature. From there, learning about the truthful teachings on this path, we discover that we belong here with the Dharma. As we settle in and take a deep breath, and slowly and naturally feel warmly connected with other fellow travelers, and with the community as a whole, we find ourselves belonging to Sangha, which in turn belongs to us. We find trust in community. That doesn't mean everything is perfectly to our liking. We find that there's inevitably frictions. That person who annoys me, some form that rankles, a nagging doubt, or persistent question. Zen is not the ultimate panacea for every problem. Sanghas are not shining Camelots. They are something far better than that. They are places where we come together to learn how humans can be together in harmony, how we can appreciate our differences, how we can work together for liberating all beings, how we can truly care for each other, ourselves, and the world. The frictions are part of the curriculum. We're not here to make nice, we're here to make free. We turn our awareness inward in meditation to cultivate freedom within, freedom from painful, limiting conditioning, from regret for the past, from dread for the future, and from agitation and distraction in the present. Meditation grounds us and steadies us as we turn our awareness outward. It replaces judgment, separation, and hostility with the wisdom and compassion we need for engaging with others in the Sangha and beyond. The Sangha is the crucible of liberation for ourselves and others. For that, we need clarity, courage, connection, and friction. Trust in community has to go beyond, these seem like nice people. It has to go beyond, I feel comfortable here. And it has to go beyond, I'm glad things seem to be running smoothly, maybe I'll stick around at least for now. Trust means deeply caring about the community, even when someone or something rankles you, even when you feel uncomfortable, even when things are not running so smoothly. It's when you realize that you, personally, are part of the plan, are immersed in its unfolding, are in fact a collaborative co-creator of its magnificence. It's not a flashy role, but a quiet, steadfast, wholehearted one. We are building something together that has never existed before this very moment. This complete expression of the Dharma for this time and this place. Trust in community does not mean perfect harmony. It is, rather, to meet each new challenge, difficulty, or struggle with confidence in our capacity to resolve it together. It is recognizing each situation as an occasion for learning collectively, as a community, with wisdom, compassion, and skillful means, rather than as a shattering disruption or a threat to our very survival. What makes a community trustworthy? I've thought about this from a lot of different dimensions and different directions. What makes a community trustworthy? And one way to think about it, I think, is through the lens of the perfect practices of paramitas, the practices of perfection. So these are not ways to become perfect. They're not intended to connect with our, perfectionism, if that's what we are gifted with, but really practices that are themselves perfect practices. And the first one is generosity. So when I'm looking at the community, I'm looking to see, does the community cultivate the field of generosity? This means an openness that invites participation, appreciation without judgment and criticism and blame. It's an embrace of the good and an offering of support and care for each other and for the Sangha. Generosity, it's the very first of the paramitas and the one that sort of incorporates all of the others. This is generosity. But then there's morality. And I think in this time in particular, well, maybe in all times it's necessary, it seems particularly salient as so much of the culture at large has lost its moral compass. So I think that morality is the question, is the community itself ethical and true to the precepts without a kind of paralyzing righteousness and without being permeated by accusations, bad faith, and blame. So it's not about this kind of righteous quality of we are the good people and everybody else is the evil people. It's not about that kind of separation. But it's really about a quality of uprightness that makes the community itself trustworthy. The third one is patience or tolerance. So do we share a recognition that we are, every single being, both pure, unique expressions of Buddha nature and also human beings limited in our capacities and our conditioning, shaped by our particular experiences? Can we together endure discomfort, distress, difficult situations with some measure of shared equanimity and confidence? Can we not just tolerate, but appreciate differences of background, experience, skills, or perspectives, knowing that they enrich and expand our community rather than threatening it? The next one is vigor. And this is a very important quality in communities, and you probably have the experience of communities where things are kind of listless, not active. So is the community active, vibrant, energetic, and engaged in the practice and the path that is the heart of our shared vow? Are members willingly taking on responsibilities and tasks, taking care of what needs to be done, and proactively seeking ways to help? Are Sangha activities regularly attended? Is the Sangha financially supported through its members? Or is there a general mood of listlessness and unwillingness so that one or two people end up shouldering all of the responsibilities and the Sangha is constantly struggling for resources? The fifth one is concentration. Is the community focused and coherent in pursuing what matters most? Sometimes a community can become scattered or distracted from its core principles and purpose, which in Zen is the endeavor of waking up and growing up together, the collective realization of the Bodhisattva vow. It's always easy to add programs and activities, but they always need to be serving the Sangha's central purpose, and that also is determined by whether there is strong support and participation in them. And finally, wisdom. We can become so vastly more wise together than any of us is alone, and we can continue to grow in wisdom together. This is not always the case. We all know that there are communities that concentrate and amplify the worst qualities that we know as the three poisons: greed, hostility, delusion, distraction. This is unwise, creates suffering, and leads to bondage rather than well-being and liberation. So a Sangha must be committed to the path of wisdom, of compassion, of mindful, energetic care. It must regard every occasion as a Dharma gate for cultivating wisdom together, to learn and grow as a community of practice, the practice of vow. If these qualities are present, the community is worthy of our trust and the investment of our time and resources and energy in supporting it. But trust is not blind acceptance. Rather, we're in time, I don't want to go too late. It assumes there's an active relation founded on goodwill and integrity. On that basis, it is open to inquiry and resilient in meeting upset. Many of us are not used to these qualities in relationships. Our early conditioning and family dynamics, or our general life experiences, may have given us distorted views about relationships. That was certainly true for me. For example, where I learned to believe that relationships were minefields fraught with danger and hidden traps. To disagree, to have one's own opinion, as I mentioned before, to violate a hidden rule, you should have known better. To make a mistake could have devastating consequences. They could destroy fragile relationships, provoke criticism, humiliation, and punishment. Missteps could be terminal. The threat hung in the air. So in my family, no one ever said that wasn't a kind thing to do, but they would say that wasn't a smart thing to do. It was all about that. It was all about intelligence. And no one ever said that wasn't kind, or this is the way to be kind in this situation, or whatever.
Would they say the opposite, that was a smart thing to do? Or
No.
Mostly negative?
It was mostly, yeah. I mean, you were being shaped by criticism, not by encouragement. So the expectation was perfection. So that was like the minimal standard. And children, Plus we were a Navy family, which meant we were sort of a band of perpetually failing recruits, who didn't know how to make a bed, who didn't know how to shine a shoe, who didn't know how to, march in formation, who didn't know all the things, we should have known. So there was that, So consequently, I had therefore no such expectation of the world. Let me go back and say, of course, the parents didn't intend to create such an experience for their children. That was not their intention. They were just struggling to make sense of their lives, managing 4 children and their own rocky relationship. And when they ultimately split, that too was a teaching about relationships, about the merging of love and hate, and the shocking reality that relationships can end, just like that. The family was never the ground of safety, connection, comfort, continuity, and care. So therefore, I had no such expectation of the world. I felt in my bones that since relationships inevitably meant that I would let someone down, say something inadvertently that hurt them, or make that egregious mistake that could never be forgotten, the fewer I had, and the shorter, the better. I could reduce my chances of causing harm. And the closer the relationship, the greater the danger, the deeper the pain of my inevitable failures. So the stakes are higher, right? I'm sorry to say that these beliefs ruled my life for many years. I married and even raised a son against the backdrop of this looming dread. How will I mess this relationship up? How will I damage the ones I love? There's a bit of despair and anxiety in it, since it is inevitable. Of course, I also had great joy in my loving husband and our bright, creative child, and that too deepens the dread in a way. So it was a very long time before this belief loosened its grip on me. Maybe you have some conditioning that tends to shape your understanding of relationships too. It actually was Flint and this Sangha that expanded my view of what relationships could be. Here, my limited, imperfect self was on public display, yet there was no ridicule. humiliation, or punishment. I've made mistakes, surely hurt some feelings, had disagreements, and amazingly, still encountered acceptance, understanding, and a willingness to work through difficulties rather than abandoning the relationship. In my universe, this strange experience was exceedingly rare, unheard of, really. We can do this for each other. We can create together an environment that allows people to untangle the painful knots of our own conditioning and beliefs about relating and form durable, resilient relationships that can weather upset, mistakes, disagreements, and struggle. We can learn better ways than most of us were taught. We have to start somewhere. The Sangha is a kind of incubator for the fresh approaches to relationships characterized by these 6 paramitas of generosity, morality, acceptance, vigor, concentration, and wisdom. So I think we should cherish this opportunity to learn and grow beyond the narrow limits of our own conditioning. Of course, that's my perspective. Your views may vary. Obviously, your experience will vary. So I have a few minutes left. I think I want to give you a little overview of what I intend to do over the course of this week. And if you have violent objections, you should let me know. I want to look at community through the lens of spiral dynamics. And some of you are not at all familiar with spiral dynamics, so I'll give you a little bit of background about that. And some of you are familiar, and you'll recognize this is an application of spiral dynamics to the concept of community. Understand and what it is that we trust in community. So what holds groups together are their values. It's not that everyone has the same values, but that the values of the group are somehow congruent with our own personal values. We may even find our own values evolving and expanding through the group. This definitely was the effect that Sangha had on me, as I mentioned. There have been, of course, many studies of human values by social scientists. But the research I found most compelling was done by Clare Graves over the course of 30 years and thousands of participants, many of whom were students in his psychology classes. His research was brilliantly conceived because he did not shape it in advance, like they do with surveys where the questions form, kind of form the results. It's a kind of a fascinating detective story I've shared when I've given courses on this work, and I'm happy to talk about it, but we don't have much time today. So instead, I just want to give you a sense of what he discovered as an overview of the talks this week. Graves taught college psychology courses, and he designed an open-ended set of writing assignments defining a psychologically healthy human being. Gathering and analyzing mountains of data semester after semester from his student papers, he began to see that their responses could be grouped. Some were very similar in ways that were hard to define. Gradually, he saw that their definitions revealed the structure of their values. And that's what they thought of as a healthy, psychologically healthy human being. Not the content of those values, but how they were organized. Over decades of then extending this inquiry to people far beyond college classrooms, he developed what he called the double helix model of human development, which applies not only to individuals, which is the way I've taught it in the past, but to groups and even whole societies. What is this model? He saw that there is a kind of evolution of these value structures, that it is progressive in stages. The double helix contains 2 strands, like DNA, they're wound around each other. And they're connected, also connected to each other. One is the nature of the external environment. The other is the biological, psychological, and social capacities and potential of the individual or group in that environment. So we are always responding to the external conditions of the environment in order to survive and thrive in that particular environment as we understand it. And in turn, our understanding of it affects our internal environment. In any event, Graves ended up with a set of pretty robust stages of development as a kind of spiral, which he believed was open-ended. There's no limit to our evolution. Later, colors were assigned to the different stages: beige, red, purple, blue, orange, green, yellow, and turquoise. I'm happy to talk at length about this, but our time, as I said, is limited. But what does this model have to do with trust and community? I believe it has a great deal to do with it, and that's what I hope to share with you this week. Hopefully this will give us a common understanding of what we are about as a community and may shed some light on what you are personally, where you are personally in relation to the community. You should know that Graves himself warned about labeling people with his model. Rather, these are systems of value structures, ways of seeing and believing and creating a world. What does that mean? It means that we can talk about, for example, blue level thinking, but we cannot talk about blue level people. For one thing, people and groups are generally moving through a stage and maybe at the beginning, middle, or end of it. For another thing, people may have different value structures for different aspects of their lives. For one thing, they may have blue level thinking at the office, for example, and they may have green level thinking with their families. This is a bit abstract, but it will become clearer as we explore the application in a Sangha, in community. But for me, a big part of trust in community depends on its values and how those values are enacted in their practices, activities, and relationships. That, in fact, is how both Flint and I ended up leaving AZC and developing Appamada. So we see in community, its values are distributed. That is, they're shared, right? And they're also embodied in its actions. And they're enacted in its practices, and they're emergent, evolving over time, revealing new aspects as it develops, as the community develops. So this is what I want to talk about this week. As we talk about trust in community, trust takes different forms at these different evolutionary stages and looks different. It's not just one thing. So there's probably enough for one day. I hope this is going to be a kind of interesting exploration for you over the course of this week, because it, in the book project that I'm working on right now, I'm in the part of the book where I'm talking about this evolutionary quality of the Sangha as it develops across time, and what emerges in that development, what arises in terms of internal structure, relationships, and the nature of roles and things like that. So that's the part of this book chapter that I'm working on, and I feel like spiral dynamics is an excellent description of the stages of that kind of emergent development. So that's probably enough for today.
We do have another 10 minutes if you wanted to open it.
Oh, okay. I would love to hear any questions that people might have about any of this. I know it's a lot.
Not really a question, but just a comment that when I first learned spiral dynamics from you, it really shifted the way that I was able to be with others. And like you said, people that hold their values at different places at different times. Hugely freeing system to be able to see, oh, okay, this person is holding their value right here, right now, and I can speak to that rather than enforce my value and start to have conflict. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is kind of freeing. When I taught it on campus, my students would go home for Thanksgiving. They'd come back and they'd say, you know, that uncle I could never get along with, I see now that he's thinking in blue level ways, you know, like, so he's thinking about rules and hierarchy and, you know, and he said, this really helps me. Because my students would be at a very different level from some of their relatives, you know, thinking quite differently. Yeah. Genevieve.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm very excited about this topic. I'm really glad we're doing this together. And it was uncanny to hear you start speaking, because I spent the whole sit in a progression of thoughts that then you talked through. And I was like, you know, belonging and the compass and, you know, repair. And I wanted to say, first of all, the quality of the community relationships is what made me really fascinated by Appamada and unable to look away. And I also want to say that this may be super obvious to everybody, but for me, one of the most liberating aspects of this community is that everyone has the intention of repairing whatever comes up, and has it to some extent practiced that process. So like you, everything you said about your childhood, I could say about mine. It's really identical. And I never knew until very recently that you could make someone angry and then work through it with them and not be annihilated and not have the relationship, broken. And so I just want to offer my deepest gratitude.
Thank you. Yes, it's very heartening to hear that. I never know when I plan these things if this is going to be, incredibly tedious. Yeah. The things that fascinate me, I don't necessarily expect to fascinate other people, but this is one, that has had a lot of influence over my own thinking. And it's given me a lot of compassion, just a lot of compassion to have that awareness. Oh, I have a way to think about other value systems that isn't punishing. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I'm really looking forward to this, not having studied spiral dynamics before, and I've been with the alma mater for a while, but I haven't been part of that. So, both in terms of getting that compassion and freedom in terms of, like, I want to understand other people whose brains and whatever, all that are different, because I feel stuck sometimes, that I have like Jeanette said, I have the intention. And the other thing that occurs to me is having this kind of knowledge will help me as I look over my own life.
Mm-hmm.
Different stages.
Different stages.
Like, what was I thinking?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have a tendency when we look back to think, I was so stupid then.
Yeah.
It's so much more helpful to say that was my red stage, That's riding in the streets, I was being maced, Yeah, that's the red stage. So, yeah. So, and an important distinction I'll give you right now to make is between values and value structures. So, if you're talking to someone, the content of the values may be family, right? And they'll say, my family is what's important to me. But for someone who is at blue level, that's a hierarchical structure with the dad at the top, the mom, and then the kids, But for someone with green level thinking, it's about being inclusive. All the neighbors' kids always come over, everything, very fluid boundaries. So the content is the same, but the way of holding those values and organizing those values is what's different. So we may think we're talking about the same thing when we say we value family, but we may be thinking in quite different value structures. Right, the way we organize our sense of those values. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It makes sense to you? So I think it's that distinction is really important, and Graves was really worried about that. He was really worried that people would believe that, now we're talking about values instead of the way that we organize our values. So to be patriotic means one thing to a blue level thinker, to a green level thinker, to a orange level thinker. And so it'll be interesting to see. I will be very interested in your thoughts about this, but particularly to apply it to community and to see the communities themselves are like entities with value structures. And they're often blind to the ways that they're organizing their values, which may make other people feel excluded, or which may create a kind of, what can I call this? Incestuous relationship, like we all believe the same way, we have to continue to value and appreciate the variety of ways that people hold their values. And it's very easy to set up, to use this system as a way of creating separation. That's not our intention. It's really a way to create understanding so that we can also, one of the things I was teaching students in rhetoric is, so you can speak in the language of the value structure the other person is using. So Yeah, I'll give you a really, really quick example of this. When I took over as the director of the Undergraduate Writing Center, war was going on between the department head and the staff in the Writing Center. And meanwhile, the graduate students were all disaffected and angry that they had to work in the Writing Center, had to work at all. So this was what I stepped into, this situation. And so the department chair said to me, I'm putting you in place so that you can clean house in there. You can make those people work the way they're supposed to be working and do what they're supposed to be doing. They don't respect me. They treat me like just an equal, and I'm like, oh, blue level thinking. Okay, then I go to my staff. They're sitting around in the meeting and they're like, we're just like a family, we want all the students to feel included. We don't want anyone to feel left out. We want to be working with students with disabilities. I'm like, oh, green level thinking, okay. So then I go back to my department chair and I say to her, I don't want you to worry about a thing. I'm in charge. I'll take care of this. If you have any complaints or criticisms, come straight to me. And she said, good. Then I went into my, staff meeting and I said, it's a community. We all help each other. We all work together. I don't want you to worry about the department chair. I'll handle her. Just, continue to build community, continue to befriend the students. We want them to feel welcome here. And they're like, thank God, and it was such a funny thing because spiral dynamics helped me in that practical situation of having to be a bridge between warring factions and to be able to speak in the terms that they understood. And that's what I was teaching my students, how to speak to red, how to speak to blue, how to speak to yellow, how to speak to orange, if you have some understanding of how that's structured, then the way you talk can connect with the way they're thinking and you don't feel so at odds. Anyway, enough preaching for one day. But at least you can see there's a practical application to this. It's not just esoteric or theoretical.
Hi. So I'm also very much looking forward to this, and I want to put it out there that I think we have an added challenge in that with our hybrid community. And I was even saying to Kim last night, well, there's a huge group in the Zendo right now. We can't see them.
Yeah.
We don't know the people that are there, or I know some voices, but you're all like teeny tiny. So I think trust in community, I was thinking, takes knowledge, and we have different levels of that because we're not in person together.
Of course.
And so I think this could really help us to see where, with this format that we have, we can do some things to acknowledge that and find ways of sort of bridging the technology, the distance, the geographic distance that's a reality.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's our hope. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be exactly the way we wish it could be with everybody all together in the same place, So we are going to have to find our ways of building trust across these very different distributed technologies, and to help people feel really warmly included. So, and hopefully people aren't aggrieved when something happens that makes them feel not included, but they use that as a point of information and knowledge, sharing and building collective wisdom about this. So it's a very big challenge, but so much better than not having a chance to connect at all.
Exactly.
Let's just take a couple of minutes and do that, just like almost like in Kinhin order, just come up and just say your name. Yeah, so everyone can see it. You can start.
Okay.
Look at the light. Yeah.
I'm Kim.
Kim the Fixer.
Hi, I'm Dave.
Hi, I'm Susan.
Hey, I'm Daniel.
We lost you, but I'm tired.
Good morning, I'm Leslie.
Should I do that? We're doing service.
Milan.
Should I do it?
Good morning, I'm Mary Beth.
Hello, I'm Laurie. Jessica.
Okay.
And I'm Joel. I'm the last one in the Zendo. Can we make it so that we can give the folks online a chance to participate in the same way?
Sure. There we go.
Hi, I'm Rosemary and I'm in New Jersey. Happy to be here.
Hello, I am Genevieve and I live in Maine.
Hi, I'm Janet and I'm in Little Rock.
I'm Becky and I am in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth and I'm here in Austin, Texas.
Hi, I'm Lynn and I am in Wimberley, Texas.
Hi, I'm Gail. I'm in Leander, Texas.
I'm Ellen. I'm in Richmond, Virginia. I am formerly from Austin.
Hi, I'm Ramona Arsvold and I'm in Austin, Texas. Good morning.
Morning. I'm Serenity, a nomad, currently in Quartzsite, Arizona.
Hi everyone, I'm Nelly. I live in Avila near Madrid in Spain, and I'm a citizen of the world.
Right. Prepare for service.